So I am the president of the Friends of Allensworth. We are the 501c3 nonprofit association connected to California State Parks, and we work with Allensworth State Historic Park. So we put on 4 events a year to raise money for the interpretive program at the park. So basically that's what we do. So we wanted to talk about Allensworth. It's my understanding, have any of you been to Allensworth or heard of Allensworth? No one? Okay, so Allensworth was started by Colonel Allensworth in early 1900. So when the slaves were freed, they were not really free. They had to live under Jim Crow laws. So the Black people were like, okay, so we're free, but we're not really free. So this isn't really working for us. So let's just go off and build a place to live and just live by ourselves. This was repeated many times. I know you all know about Central Park, where it's located. Many of you have probably been there. Central Park was called Seneca Village. It was a Black town like Allensworth. It was one of the places where many Black people went to live in peace and be economically free and just be happy and content and not have to deal with racial discrimination and oppression and all that stuff. So the colonel decided he got with some of his friends. He got with some of his friends and he decided to find a place. So he came, when he moved into LA, he thought this is a place. We can move to LA because LA was so progressive. But when they got to LA, they realized, this isn't working either. Racism is still here alive and kicking. So let's find another place where we can just live alone. So he started searching around. He went to many places. He came into the Central Valley. He heard about some property was for sale. He went into, it's just north of Delano. He went there. Discrimination was still strong at that time. White people were really not allowed to sell property to Black people. So the gentleman that owned the property sold it to him and his 4 friends, but they kind of tripled the price. So they paid the price. The colonel started going around to different places, looking for people to come move into the town. So he went around to different churches. Churches gave him money. So he got, people came from all over and they came into California, they hopped the train and they came into Allensworth. The town started growing. It was great. It was prospering. The reasons he bought that property was because the train stopped right there at the front door of Allensworth. There were 3 artesian wells there, so they had plenty of water. It was great. But things kind of went wrong. So when he bought the property, the company that he bought the property from said they would give water. So they knew they had the artesian wells, but they knew as the town grew, they may need more water. So they were promised water with the sale of the property. Well, the town started to grow, and instead of the water that was promised to them being given to them, that didn't happen. There were farmers all around Allensworth, and they started cross drilling because during that time, early 1900s, there was a drought in California. So the farmers needed water. So they knew those artesian wells were under Allensworth. So they started cross drilling and they kind of sucked the water out of Allensworth to the point where the water became arsenic. There is arsenic in the water in that area, but as long as there's enough water, the water is drinkable. But once the water table ran so low, the water became arsenic and the people could not drink it. So people started to kind of move away. They fought, for the water rights. It was just a nightmare. Nothing worked out. So people kind of started moving away. The children they go to school, they graduated high school, they go off to college, and they just didn't return because trying to make a living there was just not easy. So with the teenagers moving away, going to college, not returning, with some of the older people just saying, we can't make it here, people started to scatter. So they went north and south. A lot of them ended up in the Bay Area. Many of them ended up in Los Angeles, Long Beach. So the town slowly started to die. right before that, the third strike, once they moved the train, because once the town started to prosper, once again, we have people who said, okay, well, we didn't really think they were going to make it, but now that they're making it, we're kind of having a problem with that. So like what has happened in so many Black towns, the train stop moved to Alpaw. That's 12 miles west. Back then, there were no cars, so they had horse and wagons. So in order to move people and product, now you've got to get your crops, put them on the wagon, and haul them 12 miles down the road. That was just too much. So once the train stop moved to Alpaw, the water ran low, and then the colonel was killed stepping off of a rail car in Monrovia. When he was struck by the motorcycle, some people say once, some people say twice, some people say accident, some people say murder. During that time, he was not allowed to go to Monrovia Hospital because of discrimination. So they had to drive him to Daniel Freeman in Los Angeles, where he died. Well, there was really no one there to pick up the slack and really keep going. The colonel was a political figure in Allensworth. He was also fighting California because he wanted to bring the Tuskegee of the West into Allensworth. That was the dream. If I can get the Tuskegee of the West, a Polytech college, then more people will come. And he had this dream. But when California said no to the school, which was basically going to be all Black, even though there were white schools, and the reason HBCUs came about was because Black people were not allowed to go to white universities. So HBCUs came about, historically Black universities. Even though that was going on, when the colonel said, okay, well, fine, I'll just bring a Black institution to California. California says no. So that was a huge blow. So with those four things happening, the town just kind of started to fade away. It never actually died, but it was definitely brought to its knees. So a part of the, some of the men who actually moved there later on and raised their families there decided, we should fight to have this turned into a state historic park. So they petitioned California. During that time, I think Reagan was president and he signed off on it. So it became a state park in '84, I believe. And after that, the association connected to the park and we've been rolling ever since. So we're just here now trying to get the word out, educate people about the park, get more people to come to the park. You can have weddings at the park. You can have family reunions at the park. There's a campground at the park. It is dry camping right now, but we are working on getting solar panels, electricity, and water to make the camping experience better. But it's a wonderful, wonderful place to visit, and we hope to see you there soon. We do have the 4 events. Right now, they are virtual due to COVID. So our next event, if the park does not open, will be second Saturday in February. So that's basically the story of Allensworth, how it got started, how it prospered, and how it was brought to its knees, and how it became a state historic park. And we have big dreams for the park. We do need a new visitor center. So we have petitioned Governor Newsom. So he has given us the $570,000 to start the process. So that will get the process going. And then we're still in the process of writing more letters to encourage him to give the rest of the money, because the $500,000 is just enough to get the process started. But the actual visitor center money, we hope will come next year. We are also trying to get Allensworth into the California curriculum for the school system. It is in the preliminary stages. So we're also writing letters to Tony Thurman's office. He is the gentleman over education for California, to make sure that Allensworth is in the curriculum so that students learn about the history that's right here in California. Even though these towns are spread all over the United States, it is, Allensworth is right here in our backyard. So we want to educate the children about it to get more kids to come out also.
I have a question, Sasha.
Yes.
Over the years, how many people lived there and how many live there now?
The town of Allensworth at its peak, the census will tell you there was about 300, 350. There were probably more, because remember when Black people were brought from Africa, we were not taught proper English. We were taught a dummy down English. And the reason for that was so that we couldn't take over the country. So if you don't understand the language, then no one has to worry about you taking over the country. So we were taught a dummy down version of English. So there were a lot of things we didn't understand. That rolled over from generation to generation. So by the time they got to Allensworth, I'm pretty sure a lot of those people did not sign up for the census because they didn't really understand what that was about. So the census says about 300, 350, but it could have been more.
And what remains of the original town today?
The original, what's left of the town sits just south of the park. So if you come into the park and you look to the south, you'll see what's left of the town. It doesn't look really great. There are people that are working there that live in the town now. They're trying to get a residential area built in the town. Right now, people just kind of move in and buy a piece of property and move their trailer in, and you know, so it's just older people that are there now. Probably population now is probably maybe not quite, well, maybe still around 300. But when you talk about the historical part of the park, California State Park locks us in between 1908 and 1918. So when you drive into the park, you will see what it would have looked like in between 1908 and 1918 in its heyday.
So there's still a lot of buildings from that time?
The buildings were, the only original building there is the church and the schoolhouse. All the other buildings were brought in. Back then, Black people were not allowed to shop in regular stores, but Sears and Roebuck did allow Black people to shop from them. So the houses were purchased back then in 1908 from Sears and Roebuck. Today, State Park still purchases those same buildings from Sears and Roebuck when they put buildings in the park.
No. All right, we have a question about Colonel Allensworth. Did he serve in any wars? His title is very prestigious. What was his background?
Yes, he served in the Navy and I believe the Army. He ended up being a chaplain because once he was serving, he realized that the men had no chaplain. There was no Black chaplain that understood a Black man's problems. So he petitioned the Navy to become a chaplain, and they heard him and he became a chaplain. So that gave the Black officers someone to talk to about their problems.
What was the main thing people were doing when they lived there? Was it all agriculture, or were there other things?
There was yes, there was a lot of agriculture. There was pharmacists. There was storekeepers. What do you call the people who do the oh man, I can never think of that profession. Anyway, they do the steel. They heat the steel and make things. They had they were there. So they had, it was basically a full-fledged town. They had voting, they had everything. It was a full-fledged town. So they had everything.
Nice.
Midwives, they delivered babies, nurses, they had everything except the jail. The colonel did not want to have a jail because the colonel just felt like we should all be able to get along. And they did. They had one theft, and when they caught the gentleman, he felt so bad, he gave what he stole back.
Good. Let's see. What other towns in California are similar to Allensworth? Are there any?
None. Allensworth is the only one. Now they do have, it was called Negro Bar outside of Sacramento. It is now called Folsom Lake. It was never a full-fledged town like Allensworth, but a lot of Black people did go there, and that's why it was called Negro Bar. And then when the white people came in, they changed it to Folsom Lake. But Allensworth is the only full-fledged town in the state of California that was built, funded, and built just for Black people.
And then with a question of, do you live there?
No, I do not. We were thinking about buying some property there, but not sure yet.
How did you get involved with Allensworth?
Oh, I heard about Allensworth a long time ago. So we used to go out there for the events. And when I went out there in 2016, I wasn't working anymore. So I go out there for an event. And I noticed that the people visiting had kind of dropped off. So I asked the MC, what's going on? You know, where's everybody? I remember back in the day, we would have to come out here early in the morning to get a good spot under the shade tree. And he said, oh, you know, we're just having a hard time getting volunteers and getting the word out. And so then I joined up and ended up getting voted in as president. You know how they do. You volunteer and then they put you to work.
What's your event coming up in February?
It's Black History Month in February. So we do Black History Month in February. We do Jubilee in May because Jubilee was the time of year that the carnival would come to town. So we do Jubilee. Then we celebrate Juneteenth in June. And then we do rededication in October where we come together again. And it's kind of like a festival event. And we rededicate ourselves to continuing to work at Allensworth and get the word out.
Very nice. Do you have any other questions for Sasha? You can type them in the chat or you can unmute yourself and ask them.
Hi, Ronna, this is Patty.
Hi,
I thought I would just ask, is there any books that you could recommend, Sasha, with regards to understanding Black history in California?
Yes, and of course I'm old and senile and can't think of the name of it, but
That's okay.
I'll get the name of it and I'll get it back to you because I saw a DVD is floating around here also that talks a lot about it, but you get more out of the books. So I will get a few of those books, the names of them, and I will let you know.
Okay, yeah, just let Brianna know and she'll probably spread it around to us. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And then we have another question. There are several other Black towns around. Can you tell us anything about them?
There's several other Black towns around.
That's what the question says. Kent, do you have any specific towns?
There was a program recently on television about a town, I believe west, someplace in the Midwest, where people came for years and it grew into quite a prosperous place, but then fell into hard times as well. And so I wondered if there were any other towns like those that Sasha knew about.
In the United States or in California?
In the United States.
Oh yeah, there was over 100 of them. There's Nicodemus, there's Pocahontas, there's Nicodemus is in Kansas. It's now a state historical park, kind of like Allensworth, struggling, looking for volunteers. Let's see, Pocahontas, Nicodemus, Black Wall Street. Black Wall Street, now that's an interesting one because Black Wall Street was the first time America bombed itself from the sky. Black Wall Street wasn't Allensworth. It had grew, there were Black millionaires that lived there. And you can go to YouTube and type in Black Wall Street and there's videos and movies that tell you exactly what happened there. Allensworth was brought to its knees, but Black Wall Street was absolutely destroyed. These people had nice homes. They had airplanes, airstrips at their homes. It was great. The money recycled within the community. The white community on the other side of the tracks did not want the Blacks living with them. So the Blacks moved to the other side of the tracks and they prospered and the white people got angry and it was horrible. And if you go visit there now, there's nothing there but a little sign on the side of the road that kind of tells you what happened there. But Allensworth wasn't bombed, but you know, they did what they could to remove the people that were living there, as they did in Seneca Village, where Central Park is in New York. that was Seneca Village. That was an all-Black town. People had to educate themselves back then because they were not allowed to go to the white university. So the people who wanted to become a doctor or a lawyer or an engineer or whatever, you just had to get a book and read. And that's how they learned how to become doctors and attorneys and all those professions. But they did it. But then when they started to prosper, then New York City says, well, you know what? We need a park. Where will we put it? In Seneca Village. So they dispersed all of the Black people in Seneca Village and they built what is now known as Central Park. And that's what happened over and over and over again. There's a long list of all Black towns, and I can get a list of those and get them to Rihanna also. And you can just do some research on them and find out what happened, how they came, because we know why they came about, but what happened to those towns was tragic. Each one of them was destroyed by white people because they just did not want to see Black people prosper, which was always amazing to me, because if you don't want to live with a group of people, that's fine. So when the people go off to build a place for themselves, why destroy it? Just, you just leave them alone. Just let them be happy they're not with you if you don't want to live with them. But every time it has happened, all of those Black cities were either destroyed or brought to their knees. I mean, they literally tied men to the back of their trucks. Women gave birth on the street. If you went into labor those 3 days, when America bombed itself from the sky, there were pictures of women giving birth on the street and people just walked by. People ran for the hills. When they started bombing, people just snatched their babies, snatched their kids, and husbands snatched wives, and they just ran into the woods to just try to survive. But many of those people died that day. And it was horrible. So if you go to YouTube and type in Black Wall Street, you can see the videos, and they're just truly, truly sad.
Right. We have any more questions for Sasha tonight?
No, but it was interesting. You've given us homework to do now.
Okay.
Thanks, Sasha.
Wonderful.
You're welcome. Thanks for
you,
joining
Sasha.
in. You're welcome.
Oh, I have one more question. Let's see. We visited Allensworth and was told by a ranger that the rain would go around the town. Was this the land that no one wanted?
The rain would go around the town?
Yeah, that's what a ranger told them.
The
So
ranger
probably just didn't get a lot of rain, is what he was saying.
No, it got rain, but when they started cross drilling, when the farmers started to cross drill, it was because of a drought. There was a drought in after 1908, somewhere about 1906 or 7, there was a drought, and the surrounding farmers who did not live in Allensworth started to cross drill because they were trying to get water for their farmland. So they cross drilled, and then the people in Allensworth had to dig centrifugal wells to get deep enough to pull water for themselves. But it just got to the point where the water table just ran too low. But no, it rained. The water, I mean, it actually rains out there more than it does in Bakersfield.
All right.
And there was a lake there. When they built the water, if you go to Allensworth and you drive past the park and go down to the next left turn, you make that left turn, hop the railroad tracks and look to your right, that water that should be in Allensworth is corralled there for the farmers now. So the White River came down from the east and it dumped into Allensworth. So behind Allensworth, there was a lake. But when they started cross drilling, they just sucked all of the water out. And then as time went on, they just rerouted. The water was rerouted from the White River into Allensworth, and it's there for the farmers' use now. And so it's sitting there corralled just north of Allensworth.
Interesting. All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us, Sasha. This was really very interesting. I'm so glad we had you tonight. And thank everyone who was able to join us. I'm throwing into the chat a link for anyone who feels like making a donation tonight. We do this as a donation-based program, as well as a link to register for our next talk, which is on October 29th And we're going to have Casa Romantica Cultural Center and Gardens, which is located up in San Clemente, come and tell us about their site. So please join us. Thank you again, Sasha, and thank you, everybody. Have a nice evening.
Good night.